Salam everyone. I've been doing a lot of research in regards to when Ramadan is, and I would like to share with you my observations and actually my conclusions so far. And I need to emphasize that it's my conclusion so far because who knows, maybe along the time there will be some new information or new facts that come along and things may change. But for now, what really raised a red flag for me is that if we look at the names of the months of the Islamic calendar, some of the names are actually based on the season. Months number 3 and 4 are called Spring the 1st and Spring the 2nd, obviously because they fall in the spring. Now, if we are following a pure lunar calendar just like they are today, then this means the months of spring will start moving backwards into other seasons. In other words, you'll have a month called spring in the winter. It doesn't make sense. So what I've done is I've dug through the history and I found out that during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, as well as before, the Arabs followed a lunisolar calendar, just like the Jews and the Christians and the Hindus and the Buddhists. All Eastern religions follow a lunisolar calendar. And what a lunisolar calendar is that they count the months based on the moon, but the months are anchored based on the seasons of this, obviously because of the sun. It's called a lunisolar calendar. And every so often, they will add a certain number of days into this calendar so that the months do not deviate outside of the seasons. For the Arabs, they would add 1 month, one lunar cycle, one lunar month every 32 months. They would add an extra month in there. Well, I wouldn't say an extra month, but they would add that lunar cycle into there. And this process is called intercalation. It's just like what we have today of a leap year. Every 4 years, we add 1 day so that the days do not deviate outside of the seasons. So they had intercalation, and they also followed a lunisolar calendar. Now the question is, does the Quran support a lunisolar calendar, and does it support intercalation? And the answer is yes to both. Throughout the Quran, God talks about the sun and the moon being calculation devices. He uses them always together. Never does he say the sun is only the calculation device or vice versa. He says the sun and the moon are calculation devices, indicating that we are to follow a lunisolar calendar. As for intercalation, if you look in Surah 18, we see the dwellers of the cave and how they resided in the cave for 300 years, increased by 9. God doesn't say 309 years. He says 300 years, increased by 9. And the reason is because the difference between 300 solar years and 300 lunar years is 9 years. They applied intercalation. So intercalation existed a long time ago, and God talks about it. So the Quran supports the idea of a lunar solar calendar and intercalation. Now the big question is, when is Ramadan? If we look at the current Islamic calendar, month number 9 is called Ramadan. And if we are using a lunisolar calendar as well as intercalation, month number 9, Ramadan, will fall in September. And the first lunar cycle within September is when Ramadan begins. And this makes sense because in September, we have the equinox, where the number of days, the hours of days and night are equal in length all throughout the world. So everybody will be fasting roughly the same amount of time. And so for me, based on the information that I have and based on my observation, Ramadan falls in the September, and it's the first lunar cycle within September. That's when Ramadan begins. You guys feel free to share your information, share your understanding of when Ramadan is. Feel free doing that. I know that there are some people who say Ramadan actually is in the summer solstice because Ramadan means intense heat or scorching hot or something like that. And what I would tell them is that if you dig into the lexicons a little more, you will see that the Arabs also called the beginning of the fall season as Ramadan or Ramadan because the rain pours onto the hot surface. So Arabs also called the beginning of the fall season as Ramadan. Interestingly, the fall season is when things start to cool down. And there are hints in the Quran, and who knows if these are valid or not, but if you look at Surah 73 and 74, it is said that the Prophet Muhammad would is called Ya ayyuhal muzammil, ya ayyuhal mudaththir, or you cloaked one, indicating that it was cold. Prophet Moses, when he wanted to warm his family with a fire, and Jesus, when he told Mary to shake from the palm tree and dates would come down, all these indicate cooler months. So for me, as far as I can see from the Quran, that the Ramadan is in the September based on the first lunar cycle. Assalamu alaikum.